depannya. Bagaimana tren ke depan ya? Waduh, diprediksi masih akan bertambah. Tadi saya lihat di chatnya aja, di Q&A sudah ada pertanyaan.
Selamat siang. Terima kasih kepada para peserta webinar yang sudah hadir pada siang hari ini. Webinar akan kita segera mulai. Baik, sebagai pengantar, terima kasih kepada yang sudah hadir pada kesempatan diskusi siang hari ini, sudah join di webinar kali ini. Ini adalah bagian dari seri Citiestalk yang rutin ya diselenggarakan oleh Citiestalk. Dan pada kesempatan kali ini Citiestalk diselenggarakan secara online. Jadi ini sudah kedua kalinya Citiestalk diselenggarakan secara online. Dan untuk Citiestalk kali ini kita akan menggunakan bahasa Inggris sebagai bahasa pengantar diskusi. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Citiestalk webinar series. My name is Dimas. I'm with the Citiestalk as the host of this webinar. Thank you to all participants for joining us. I would like to inform you that today's Citiestalk is made possible through the cooperation of Citiestalk, Tractable NG, and also APEXI, or Association of Indonesia Municipalities. I also would like to thank Tractable NG for their full support in making this webinar possible. And also special thanks to all speakers here, Charles, Etienne, Matthias, Mia, and Pak Edwin from Tractable. Good afternoon. And Pak Hadi, Kepala BPIW. Selamat siang, Pak Hadi.
Selamat siang.
And then Pak Bima Arya, Wali Kota Bogor. Selamat siang. Ibu Teti and Pak Andi from Indonesian Association of Urban and Regional Planners. Pak Andi, as the moderator of this discussion, will introduce all speakers to all of you later. And during this webinar, please mute your microphone. So if you have any questions to discuss, please feel free to use group chat facilities. And for all participants who would like to apply for e-certificate, please fill in the form through the link in the chat group. We'll provide the link by the end of this webinar. So enjoy the webinar. And before we start, please, Mr. Wikanta, Pak Edwin from Tractable Indonesia, if you would like to give some additional introduction. Silakan, Pak Edwin.
Okay, terima kasih. At this moment, I would like to share a screen. Let me see. Okay, just to make sure that everyone can see my screen. Okay, let's start. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us into the webinar. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Edwin Pramudita Wikanta. I am the head of Urban and a Business Development Manager for Tractable Indonesia. Thanks to our collaboration with Citiestalk team and our key speakers, Bapak Hadi, Sudayono, Dr. Bima, Ibu Teti, and of course, Bapak Andi. A second, there is some technical issue here. Okay. I'm sorry how to, okay, finally. Okay, we are Tractable. We would like to give our warmest greeting to all of you. We are very happy to support to see energy of the participants from ministry, government agency, state-owned companies, private sectors, universities, or even from overseas. Before we start, I would like to introduce myself, introduce our team, pardon me, Mr. Charles Edouard as the General Manager of our Urban Business Line, Mr. Matthias van Stewegen as the Head of BD Urban Development and Environment, Mr. Etienne Drouet as the Head of Urban APEC, Ms. Maria Teresa Quimpo, also Chairperson of the Special Committee of Urban Planning, United Architects of Philippines, and also act as Head of Urban Philippines, and of course, myself. Before we start with Mr. Charles Edouard, we would like to apologize that Mr. Charles Edouard needs to leave earlier after Ms. Mia presentation. So Mr. Matthias van Stewegen will continue with us. So before we start presentation, let me briefly share some information about Tractable. Who we are, what we do, and what motivates us into the community and the world. Tractable is a French-Belgian engineering company with more than 150 years experience providing multidisciplinary service in energy, water, and urban. Tractable strives to play an active role by developing solutions geared towards positive impacts, such as climate change mitigation and ensuring access to sustainable and reliable energy, water, and urban infrastructure. But don't forget, we also give solution in innovative way to the zero carbon transition and digital transformation. We are also proudly say that we are part of NG Group. For who doesn't know about NG, the local terminology or Indonesian analogy, NG is the PLN, PGN, and PDM of France, and we are the leading a zero carbon transition in the world. Of course, we present in every continent, and we have a billion revenue in the world. And how about Tractable? Tractable, we have about 5,000 employees around the world. We present in more than 70 countries. We have a high safety standard, and we actively publish a minimum 190 technical publication per year. Of course, we have a project developed over in more than 150 countries, and including the turnover about 660 million euro last year. Okay, we provide it's like end-to-end solution from the strategy, from pre-investment, from implementation, operation, and decommissioning. That's end-to-end about services about Tractable. So strategy, pre-investment, implementation, operation, and decommissioning. And how about Tractable presence in Indonesia? Well, actually, Tractable, we are have our very first project last time under Cogné et Belia, now is a Tractable France in Indonesia in 1955. The client was Ministry of Public Works. It's about Cimadu Basin, it's development of a hydroelectric power plant. So Tractable, along the way, we give a contribution to government, go to private, and until 2012, we have our rep office in Indonesia, and finally, in year 2016, we have a PT Tractable Engineering Indonesia, and our key focus is about renewable energy, thermal power, T&D, urban infrastructure, complex building structure, water, hydro, gas, and transportation and distribution. That's the introduction from Tractable. So I would like to continue to Mr. Moderator for Mr. Charles Edouard to continue his speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to Pak Edwin. I hope you hear me well. And as Pak Edwin said, I'm very sorry that I need to leave in about 1 hour. First of all, I would like to thank all of you, specifically Pak Andy, because I know we are colleagues in ISOCARP, International Association of Urban Planning. We are together part of the scientific committee. So, of course, thanking all the participants and the other speakers. Starting from this introduction on who we are at Tractable and also being part of NG, I would like to rapidly say that our two main focuses that I think we really need to better focus on with the Indonesian market are how to mitigate the climate change. So we are speaking about green energy, of course, also about green mobility. We are having the motto, and I think it's a very good one, designing better cities and territories, engineering a zero carbon future. So what does it mean to engineer, to be the engineer of the zero carbon future, not only on national scale, but I would say at a very local scale, very decentralized scale. So with what does it mean to build a new city? What does it mean to design an eco-district? What does it mean to decarbonize an existing urban area? So this is concretely the kind of studies that we are doing with our local team under the leadership of Pak Edwin and also under the leadership of Pak Etienne in the APAC region, of course, together with our colleagues in Europe and in the other continents. So this is concretely what we aim at boosting with you, with all of you in Indonesia, is first of all, how to design solutions that could help to mitigate the climate change. So this is the first axis. To do that, we focus on urban design and spatial design, of course, everything which is linked to district cooling. We all know that district cooling is a very important asset in order to decarbonize districts and cities. We, of course, focus on transport and mobility. So transport is public transport infrastructures, and mobility is around electric mobility, natural gas mobility, and in the future we'll come to hydrogen mobility. Of course, we work on low carbon buildings, and last but not least on environment impact assessment of large infrastructure projects on energy, and of course on more decentralized infrastructures at the scale of cities and local authorities. On the second slide, Pak Edwin, if you can put the second slide. Edwin?
Yes, I already put on second slide.
I don't see it on my screen.
Okay, let me.
It's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Thank you. So the first big issue, big trend that we want to promote with all of you is how to mitigate climate change with what I just said. And the second big impact, big trend, big issue is how to fight, not only to mitigate, but to fight this COVID-19 pandemic that we all see everywhere in the world, and that you see very concretely, I would say, in your different cities. So for that, what we do, and it's not new, in fact, it's two things. The first one is to build or to help local authorities and also the private sector to build new hospitals, new facilities to be transformed as hospitals, temporary hospitals. So we have having references with some hotels. So we transform hotels into temporary hospitals. And also we design and implement some tents, temporary tents, close to existing hospitals. So this is one thing that we are doing. The second thing is to transform existing hospitals in order to, for instance, if we reduce some chirurgy, to transform chirurgy blocks into areas to receive some people having the COVID-19. So this is concretely in a nutshell, and I will finish with that. First axis is how to mitigate climate change at the local level. Second thing is how to fight with COVID-19, building temporary hospitals or helping existing hospitals to fight this pandemic. So I would like to thank all of you, and I will leave the floor to Pac Etienne to concretely show you what we offer to cities and local authorities in Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you. Thank you very much. So let me kickstart this. So indeed, as Charles mentioned it, there is a very important and immediate challenge around the pandemic and COVID. And indeed, we have to face what is sometimes referred as the new normal. If everyone can just be on mute, I think there are some sound of the noise. Thank you. So anyway, at Tractable, we believe we have three main approaches in the way we work. Three main approaches to tackle these challenges in the new normal. So sustainability is the first one, and I would say that firstly, we believe that sustainability should be mainstream. It should not be an afterthought or an addition to something planned, but an integral part of cities. And first aspect of this is urban resilience. Cities are indeed increasingly affected by a wide range of natural or man-made stresses, because important disruption, social breakdown, economic decline, or physical collapse, for instance. But on the other hand, if it's well managed, cities offer also important opportunities for economic development, for access to basic services, etc., etc. So this is one aspect we take into account when we do engineering and design. Second aspect for us, which is very important, is circular economy. Circular economy, it takes into consideration economic, social, environmental advantages during the entire life of project. So we develop strategies, we develop action plans to maximize resource usages, to reduce consumptions, to optimize performance and recycle materials. The third aspect of it is sustainability per se. Sustainability is sometimes perceived as a bit abstract or too theoretical. So at Tractable, we really focus on making sustainability tangible and profitable, because integrating sustainability should translate into better environmental impact, create a broader support and more security for the urban development we are targeting. Second aspect of the philosophy we have at Tractable is what we call digitization. So for us, of course, developing a digital urban solution is very important. We have developed a variety of tools and methodologies that integrate different disciplines into this digital approach. And they are applied to many aspects of urban development. From integrated urban planning, from development of new services, development of platform, real-time urban data management and optimization, 3D visualization, etc., etc. So we are using these tools to increase and enhance the way we work and the way we do engineering as well. And I would just say a quick word about the last aspect of our philosophy at Tractable. It's really innovation, being innovative. We are continuously developing new solutions, responding to the needs of our clients. Some of them we will present today, like the 360 scan, I will just introduce in the next phase. But we have innovation to bring added value to our client, and we are continuously reinventing ourselves to make sure that we are always proposing cutting-edge services. So that's the, I would say, the high-level view of philosophy of Tractable. And now I will deep dive into a methodology we use in order to build, design better cities and territories. This methodology is what we call an integrated approach. Integrated approach is a three-step process that we use to integrate sustainability at the core of every urban development we work on. These three steps, you can see them on the slide. It starts with a 360 scan, which is essentially a diagnostic, and I will zoom into this one a bit, followed by master plan, deep dive master planning on different disciplines, and ending with an action plan, concrete action plan that can be actioned in order to launch new infrastructure development. So if I start by the first bit, I will look into the 360 city scan. So as I mentioned before, this city scan is a diagnostic in order to assess a project or an existing city. And it's a matrix of evaluation we have built to look into all the aspects that are necessary for cities or territories to become sustainable. And so if I look a bit in the detail, and I will start by the upper right here, what we call circular city. First, we will look at everything that goes around the production and consumption system of a city. So namely looking into infrastructure and services for energy, for water, for land use, and we will assess the level of cities on this aspect. Secondly, we will look, sorry, if you could come back to the one before. Yeah. So secondly, we will look at what we call inclusive city. So inclusive city is really what we are. It's looking. Okay, so I don't know who's doing that, but please not touch anymore. So inclusive city is the part we are looking to see whether infrastructures and services are accessed in an equal manner by all population in the city. So we look at housing infrastructure, we look at education, healthcare, but also at citizen engagement. The third aspect that is very important for sustainability in territories is the attractivity or attractiveness of a city. So we looked at this aspect as well. Look at public spaces, access, healthy environments, such as the ratio of park in a city, the ratio of greeneries. We look also at the space that is kept for tourism and cultural aspect in a city, which all contribute to the attractiveness of a particular urban development. Fourth aspect, we looked at production. We look at the dynamic of the economy of a city. We look at the ratio of innovation. We look at local economy, how dynamic is the economy as compared to the level of population. Another aspect which was mentioned earlier in my speech and Charles' speech is the resilience aspect of city. So we looked at how well a city can absorb or resist against future environmental shock, climate change, safety, security, is also aspect we are looking into. And last but not least, we looked at what we call connected city, which is essentially looking at transportation, mobility, access for everyone, but also connectivity of the citizens towards the services of the government, for instance, or this kind of aspects. So this matrix helps us to have a diagnostic to see where a particular cities or territory should focus their efforts. And this is really a first step for us to understand what will be the focus in the next phases. So once we have done this, and I will show you before a few examples. You can see here some 360 we have performed in the region, Manila, Jakarta, Bangkok. And you can see that on some aspects these cities are really good, but on some other aspects, sustainability elements are missing. And what this tool is allowing us is really to target the best effort, the quick wins, are also the main point of focus of cities in order to become more sustainable. So the next phase is, once we have established the list of priorities, we will go into deep dive. We will go into specific master plan activity. So they can be on various aspects. Of course, we will look first at energy mix in order to reply to the demand of the different usages needed by cities or territory. What is the best energy mix, taking into account the natural resources, but also the dynamic of the territory. Secondly, we will look at mobility, transport. What are the parts that are very important for these aspects? What is the best mobility in terms of natural resources, but also population dynamic or industrial dynamic? We look at buildings as well, a very important part of cities and territories. Of course, we'll do a deep dive in resources in order to make sure that the way they are used is optimized. And we will look into what we call circular economy scenarios and climate resilience aspect, as I mentioned before. We have a set of assessments that are a bit more transversal, like digital, that we bring into the picture to make sure that not only cities are sustainable, but they become also digital, and they will be able to provide these services from a digital perspective. As I mentioned a bit earlier, we have developed tools. So I'm just mentioning this to give you an idea of what we use when we work on this type of project. We have developed in-house tools that help us to be more digital and more reactive. So we have a tool on energy, which is called Prosumer, which is there to assess and define the best energy mix scenario for a territory. And we are working here with an internal entity partner of us, which is called NG Impact. On mobility, we have developed an internal tool as well to look at best scenario for green mobility for a specific territory. It's called Triangle. We have the capacity with a partner we have acquired a few years ago, which is called Citadel, to develop digital twin of cities. This is particularly useful for cities to assess different scenarios and scenarios in that will be developed in this digital twin aspect, rather than having to do costly pilots, for instance. So it can be very important. The 360 tool I already described, and specifically I will finish with this one. Specifically on circular economy, we have developed internal methodology and tool to develop the best scenario in terms of circular economy, the reuse of waste of one industry by the other, etc., etc. And this scenario can be defined by us and then assessed with the other tools I mentioned before. Once this is performed, the last aspect of our work is really to have an action plan that can be that will lead to proper and concrete infrastructure development. So we will have a list of infrastructure scenarios, infrastructure projects that can be discussed on case by case to meet the sustainable goal of a city or territory. And after, of course, if the client choose us, we can accompany the client in engineering phases or construction and supervision, etc., etc. So I'm just going to give one quick example. We have performed such work recently in Australia for a project called Greater Springfield. Springfield is essentially a new development. It's close to Brisbane. There's a bit of brownfield, but there's a lot of greenfield as well. And we have performed for the owner, for the developer, CT scan, as I mentioned, to do the diagnosis, to evaluate where should be the point of focus. We then deep dive in master planning, energy, transport, water and waste. And they had a specific target. They wanted to be zero net energy by 2038. So that was the target, and we helped them to define and build the action plan to reach that target. And so they now have a full action plan based on different infrastructures, such as energy related with renewable power, solar plant, but also providing cooling or heating through combined network. We've looked at mobility, proposed electrical vehicle infrastructure, etc., etc. And so we have helped them to write the roadmap to this net zero energy by 2030. So this is typically the kind of project we can do, and we have the right methodology to do this kind of project. So thank you very much. I think, Edwin, you wanted to say a quick word.
Yeah.
Edwin?
Okay, then, Etienne, I think I will take from this. Thank you for the introduction, and then I will let Mia to discuss later, yeah, about the what kind of the lesson learned that you have conducted so far through your several projects, yeah. So, Bapak Ibu sekalian, good afternoon again from me. I'm Andy, the moderator for today's discussions. And then I think we have just heard about the introduction that lesson learned, and also what we call that practical knowledge and experiential knowledge that brought by Charles and also Etienne, that I think it's a good introduction for our discussion. At least I can capture, for example, how we deal with the low carbon cities development, for example, and how we can do proper methodology to, let's say, to assess the gap and the needs of our city to be more sustainable and to be more responsive to the uncertainty by climate change. And the interesting part, I think, how Tractable's point of view is try to start from the energy sustainability. I think this is also quite new, at least for me. How then we can, let's say, start to develop city with very miserable counting on the energy itself, and how they try to make more let's say dependent or sustained by the renewable energy. And then I think later we can discuss with our other resource persons. But one thing, the integrated approach that they also share to us will be interestingly also discussed. At least we have at this moment Pak Hadi, the head of the we call it RIDA, Regional Infrastructure Development Agency. He is also our advisory board of IAP, very experienced in managing the integrated development of infrastructures, not only now in the RIDA, but before in also in Housing and Settlement Agency in Ministry of Public Works. And then second one, we also will hear from Pak Bima Arya, the Mayor of Bogor, a satellite city just 40 kilometers from Jakarta. He also, yes, Pak Bima, thank you for joining us. I think this is his second period, and he also very knowledgeable in urban politics and also in how he also become a vice chairman for the Association of the Municipality of Indonesia. And we also welcome Pak Arif, the mayor of Tangerang, is also here, and later we can also ask his opinion on how Indonesian cities should also respond to the climate change and also to the sustainable development. I think after those both two, we will also hear from Mia, our colleague from Philippine Institute of Urban and Environmental Planner. She was also she is also a part of Tractable NG in Manila. And also we have Ibu Teti Argo. She is the head of Innovation Center at IAP, Indonesian Association of Urban and Regional Planner. She also teaches in the Urban and Regional Department in ITB. So let's start to discuss this, and then let's start to Pak Hadi. Pak Hadi, are you on the microphone now? And please also share how actually Indonesia progress on dealing with the integrated approach, yeah, because as you see also in Tractable, they combine energy, road, and also even the environment. We in Indonesia, we are divided into several ministries, and how the challenges and how your thinking and your approach to handle this integration. So I will give a floor to you first, and then we can later give to Pak Bima Arya. Silakan Pak Adi.
Okay, terima kasih. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for inviting me as one of the speakers in this moment. So please let me share our view in discussing about the future of Indonesian cities. My presentation will be divided by several points here. One is about the challenge, and the next one, the policy and strategy, and what are the way forward. The first thing, what are the challenges at this time? I would like here to express several points about the challenge of the development. One regarding the natural resource management, and then about the climate change and disaster risk management and urbanization, and also inequalities in the country, especially in the infrastructure development, and also about the urban regeneration. First, when we talk about the natural resources management, we know that several cities in the country are facing a problem of flooding, clean water scarcity, traffic congestion, slum areas, and land subsidence, for example, in the metropolitan of Jakarta. And when we talk about the urbanization, we can see in the data that at this time, the population in the cities is about more than half of the population living in the cities. So I think this is the challenge for us, especially for the Ministry of Public Works and Housing, how to fulfill the infrastructures by looking at the total population. And hopefully the urbanization can generate also the gross domestic products, as we can see in the other parts of the Asia, like in East Asia, the urbanization can generate about 1% to generate 2.7% of GDP. So I hope Indonesia experience also like other cities in Asia Pacific. And when we talk about the climate change, we can see in Indonesia, there are several regions that facing a very high vulnerability in climate change. And also in Java Island, yeah, we know that northern part of Java Island is prone as the climate change impact. Another thing, when we talk about disaster risk, we know that there are some disaster-prone areas in the country. The impact is like the volcanic eruption, earthquake, tsunami, and maybe like in Palu, we know the condition, the worst condition is liquefaction. So we, from Ministry of Public Works and Housing, are very concerned about the challenge in the disaster risks like this. Another one, now we know in the country there are a pandemic COVID-19, and you know many cities, including big cities in Indonesia, like Jakarta, Surabaya, Semarang, also facing the problem, the impact of this, particularly in the impact of the unemployment. Now at this time, the unemployment rate becoming higher. So we also from Ministry of Public Works are concerned how we can save this challenge to set up the programs that suitable for facing this challenge. And we talk about inequalities in the country. We talk about now, for example, the economic condition. So we know mostly of the gross domestic product in the country happens in the Java Island. So we from the ministry wants to distribute the program and the projects not only in the Java Island, but also to other islands, particularly in eastern part of Indonesia, like in Sulawesi, Maluku, and Papua. We also facing the challenge regarding the infrastructures of water and sanitation. Data shows that even Indonesia has an increase in the access of the water and sanitation, but maybe other countries in Southeast Asia improve better than our country. So we see here, so Indonesia need to fasten the development of infrastructure, particularly in the water and sanitation. The next one, we know that urban regeneration is also important, yeah, how we can invite the informal sectors to increase also the local economic condition in the cities. So when we consider the challenge, now we think about the policy. What are the policy to face the challenge? One, we rely on the international or global policy. We know that we have a sustainable development goals. And for us in the Ministry of Public Works and Housing, it's very relevant with some of the goals. Let's say here 6 goals regarding the water, regarding the sanitation and housing. So this is our concern, how we can develop the infrastructure in the country by relying on the sustainable development goals. Another guidance is from UN Habitat saying implementation in the new urban agenda, which recommends inclusive development. So not only from government, but also private and community to take part in the development. The next one, our national medium-term development plan for the next 5 years suggests that infrastructure development is one of the important pillars among the 7 agenda. So we understand this by combining the infrastructure development with the regional development. So now my ministry, Public Works and Housing, are very concerned not only in infrastructure development, but also in the regional development as well. And when we talk about the regional development in the country, we know that there are some focus of the development for its islands. For example, in Sumatra, we in Sumatra want to develop like in the eastern part of Sumatra, yeah, to have a better growth, yeah, then to can generate other part of Sumatra Island. And for Maluku and Papua and Kalimantan, we also have the strategy, the policy here. For example, in Kalimantan, we will have a new country capital city in East Kalimantan. And for Maluku, we have a guidance how we can develop the economic by looking at the potential of the maritime development. When we talk about the medium-term guidance from 2020-2024, we can see also here that for urban infrastructure, the focus is also covering the water and sanitation and housing. So this is our concern for my ministry. And if we talk about the region, there are also metropolitan areas in the country. Yeah, there are 10 metropolitan areas in the country that are also our focus as the development. And in the country, my ministry also set up the strategic plan for the 5 years. Yeah, and the integrated infrastructure and regional development conducted by looking at the top-down approach and bottom-up approach. Top-down approach meaning that in the central governments, our ministry make coordination and synergy with other ministries. And we look also the regulation at this time, including laws and the government regulation and presidential regulation. And for the bottom-up approach, we listen from the local government, what are the potentials and the problems in the local governments. And then we talk also about the spatial planning, yeah, how we can rely on the spatial planning. And for funding, we combine the funding, not only resources from the central government funding, but looking at another sources like from private and also from the local government funding. So I think this is a very good policy. The next one, in our country, Ministry of Public Works and Housing has been setting up 35 strategic development regions in the country. The idea is how we can focus on each regions to fulfill the infrastructure gap and also the development of the infrastructure in each region. So the idea is to synergize and to coordinate better with the other sectors. Yeah? Not only sectors under the Ministry of Public Works, but also sectors from other ministry like port, airport, and also the tourism destination. So we coordinate and synergize with other ministries. So in our 35 strategic development regions, we have 15 indicators. The idea is not only to focus on the urban centers area, but also to include all the areas, including the rural areas, the border areas, and also underdeveloped areas, and also the small outer islands in the region. So we will combine all the development, not only in the center of the metropolitan or big cities. For example, here, I will give a sample. At this time, my ministry preparing the planning, integrated planning for the metropolitan areas, including Jabodetabek Punjur, Jakarta, Bogor, Tangerang, Bekasi, and also Kedung Sepur, ya, in Semarang, Kendal, Ungaran, Purwodadi. So the strategy now, we have a strategy here, how we can create the cities in the future. Yeah. So we have many aspects here to consider for the cities in the future. How we can have a sustainability, how we can rely on the resilience to disasters, how we can have basic services and housing with the appropriate condition, how we can have a zero waste and low carbon condition, and how we can generate the local economic development. So this is our strategy. I will give some example here to implement this strategy. For example, one is now we're preparing about the new capital of the country to move in East Kalimantan. So we are still working on it for the design together with Bappenas and together with the other agency. The idea is how we can have another growth center, not only in Jakarta, in Jawa, but also we have a growth center, the new growth center in Kalimantan. So the design will combine all the aspect like collaboration and also the response to climate change, and also how we can also involve the communities as the actors of development. Another example, now, as I talked before, we preparing the development of 10 metropolitan areas in the country. So if we look at this map, the metropolitan areas are not only in the Java Island. We have in Sumatra, maybe Dangro. We have in Sulawesi, Manado, Bitung. We have also in Sulawesi, Makassar. We have in Kalimantan, Banjarmasin metropolitan area. And we have also in Bali, Sarbagita area. So this is now our focus, in 10 metropolitan areas. And as I talked before, the focus now not only in Jabodetabek, Jor in Jakarta, but also in Semarang metropolitan area or Kedung Sepur. So hopefully, like next month, we will finish this integrated planning for this metropolitan area. Another sample I would like to give here is regarding the tourism development. So at this time, our office preparing at least 3 tourism destination with integrated tourism development. And this one, I give one example, the development in Toba Lake in North Sumatra. So in developing the tourism area, we have to consider 8 things here, 8 aspects here. The first one regarding the regulation, the second one about the demand of the infrastructure, and then we will see the infrastructure gap, and also we will see about the condition of social, economic, and culture, local culture, and how we can have a formulation, integrated planning, which coming from the stakeholders, not only from my ministry, but also by integrated with the other ministry. Another sample I would like to give is the development of new town development. So like the Tanjung Selor is a small city in Kalimantan, in North Kalimantan. Now we will build this as a sample of the new town. Even this is not the only new town in the country, because we have several areas in the new town in the country, but this is one of the focus now, how we can develop the Tanjung Selor in North Kalimantan. Another one is Maja as the new city in West Java. Another example regarding the border development, For example, the border development in Skau, Papua. Now we have built the border station, and then we will continue with the border area development, not only in the border station, but also the area surrounding, including the market, including the potential in the agriculture and others. The idea is how we can develop the infrastructure, but also we can increase the local economy, by increasing the products of the local agriculture, etc. Another example regarding the planning and programming and development for resilient city, for example, in Palu. This is a sample how we can deal with the problems of the disasters in Palu. So we, not only Ministry of Public Works and Housing, but also Bappenas and also another ministry like the Spatial Planning Ministry, work together in preparing the integrated planning for the recovery of the area. So we have now setting up the planning to develop the Palu city. Another sample I would like to give here regarding the incubation area. My office has built 2 incubation area in East Java and Bali. The idea is how we can have a small area, let's say 5 hectares or 6 hectares, and by providing many facilities to small scale economy. So in this site, we can invite small scale economy to take part in the development of the area. The way forward, the last thing that I want to talk here. We now preparing the National Urban Development Project together with Bappenas, even at this time only covering 5 cities, but in the future we will cover around 10 or 15 cities. And the National Urban Development Project will work together with also Ministry of Home Affairs. So we will not only talk about the plan and the program, but also how to implement with the local governments together by also guidance from the Ministry of Home Affairs. So once we have the planning and programming, then we will give this to the local governments to implement together with us. And again, about the funding, we need to share together, not only using the funding from the central government, but also the funding from the local governments. So for the conclusion, I will say here several things. One, Indonesia, especially my office, my ministry, needs to fasten infrastructure development, as well as regional and city development to fulfill the gap and to reduce disparity. And the second one, national policy strategy and also the strategic plan for the Ministry of Public Works and Housing are the key guidelines for regional and city development and infrastructure development in the country. And as I said before, we have 35 strategic development areas that will be the focus of the development in the country as the growth centers. And we will see also the support of urban-rural linkage in development. And we, from the RIDA, Regional Infrastructure Development Agency, or BPW, has been conducting the Integrated Infrastructure Development Plan for strategic development areas, metropolitan areas, tourism areas, country border areas. So I think we need to work together to implement all these programs listed in the planning. And the last one, the future cities and regions in Indonesia need to balance the potential in economic, social, technology, and environmental issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Adi, for your comprehensive view and also bringing out us very, let's say, impressive Indonesian infrastructure efforts, to increase the competitiveness of Indonesian cities, but also to other outer islands and also to other tourism destination areas. So it seems like our central government has several key points. The importance of key points is like acupuncture, right? Yeah, you will inject several infrastructure to certain area, and then hopefully it will grow the regional development itself. So thank you for that. But before I give the floor to Pak Bima Arya, I also welcome to other participants from YouTube channel. We have 100 people there. Thank you so much for joining us. And also from our colleague from Ministry of Coordinating Ministry of Economic, from Bappenas, and also from Public Work itself. Sorry not to say hello at the first time, but thank you for joining us, and also please share your thought on these issues. And also we say hello to our colleagues from the outside of Indonesia, from Singapore, from Japan, and from other European countries to join us here. So back to Pak Bima Arya, as you may heard from our previous speakers, Hadi and also Charles and Etienne, that the infrastructure seems to play a key role in how to grow your urban area. But I think Bogor has unique place in the middle or upstream of Ciliwung, and then you have very iconical botanical square garden, and you must dealing with the climate change. So please give your thought and what your progress on develop Bogor city. The floor is yours, Pak Bima.
Thank you, Pak Andi. Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thanks to Apexi and Citiestalk for inviting me to this very important and interesting event. The city of Bogor, as part of Jakarta metropolitan area, actually faces a lot of development pressures, such as the increase of workers who live in the city of Bogor, and also we are currently a favorite destination for education, meetings, travel, and also shopping. Increased population mobility, congestions, garbage, land use pressures are some of the issues and challenges faced by our city today. To meet these challenges, there needs to be effort to accelerate changes for the advancements of the city of Bogor. So that during my leadership period in the first 5 years, from 2014 to 2019, and continue to the next period until 2024, we remain consistent that the development of Bogor city has 3 major themes: smart city, heritage city, and green city. That are the major characteristic or differentiation of our city compared to other cities in Indonesia. And as far as
is anybody here? Bima? Bima? I think we lost your voice. Hello?
we need to be making collaborations in regional context with the province of West Java so that contributions can be
Kalau yang lama kan, film Inggris, iya lama.
Hello? Pak Bima, I cannot hear your voice. I think we will wait a moment for Pak Bima to back join us, but I think there are some signals. Okay.
Okay. Can I continue
Okay, back
my
to you, Pak.
presentation? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, vehicle congestion is a major issue in our city today, especially on weekends. More than 300,000 travelers from out of town come to our city. So the current development priority is to develop mass public transportation, such as light rail, train, and tram. And it is also necessary to develop a parking, building, and integrated area, or TOD. Some of the ongoing efforts in the energy sector include improving the quality and the quantity of pedestrian path, developing bus mass transportations, utilizing gas for public vehicle, and going forward to build several transit-oriented development, which is connected by LRT, trams as a local public transportation mode and regionally. And in fact, our city is not like Jakarta because we have limited budget, but we are trying to find as many as possible the variety of sources, and we are open to investment and infrastructure development grants to accelerate our programs. Bogor is actually designed as a family-friendly city, so public open spaces must be increased, and our city is very famous for botanical gardens. So the parks and greening on infrastructure is priority program of the city of Bogor. And we have managed to organize public space and continue to build and organize this area. But our challenge is the arrangement of riverbanks, which require a lot of time and effort because they are related also to social aspects. To overcome the problem of waste, it is necessary to go through the socio-economic approach. Not only technical aspect, we continue to improve the community institution to manage waste from the sources in addition to solid waste management of the city, and not to throw garbage and domestic waste into the river. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Yeah. We have managed also to reduce place waste through a policy of not providing plastic bag in modern stores, supported by the community and entrepreneurs. And until now, the system is still running well. The banning of plastic bag in modern market throughout the city. And we also plan to build a city-scale waste bag management, and currently in the process of being supported by the Ministry of Public Works in the Republic of Indonesia. To focus on the problem of major rivers in the city of Bogor, we also focusing on organizing river with an approach to increasing the added value of the river itself, such as improving the quality of settlements, the quality of housing surrounding the rivers, and also the quality of public spaces surrounding the river. We are also now trying to create some of good places for tourist destinations and also support facilities. We admit that we have quite complicated coordinations, because in developing infrastructure, we has to face a different authority. We are dealing with provincial level. We also has to deal with the national level. But overall, the coordination is okay. We are continuing to implement the progress of naturalization of the river. And to implement policies and the program, we must engage directly with citizens, foster citizen innovations, increase dialogue with the community, and collaborate with stakeholders. The program planning and implementation process must be consistent with citizens, so that the benefits of development can be sustained. In managing the environment, collaboration with neighboring regions must also be carried out. We collaborate with Bogor Regency, our neighbor, the Regency of Bogor, in terms of the synergy of environmental activities, river management, drinking water, and transportation. And Bogor Regency is now currently following us in banning the use of plastic bag in modern stores. And on the regional scale, we are working with the Jakarta province to handle the Ciliwung River, such as garbage and funding the construction on retention ponds. The province of Jakarta also has a good commitment to assist our city in overcoming transportation problems, which will support the development of park and ride and develop bus-based mass transportation to serve Bogor Jakarta commuters. Collaborations with other cities in Indonesia has been carried out through the facilitation of APEXI, the Indonesian City Government Association, and ICLE Indonesia. We initiate the launch of the movement of 12 cities in Indonesia, which focus on emissions reduction issues. For global cooperation, we thank ICLE for encouraging the city of Bogor to be able to maintain a low carbon city and be able to actively take part in the global level as General Executive Committee ICLE. And we are pleased to have a benefit from the activities carried out by GCOM due to the support of capacity building for both low carbon planning, greenhouse gas inventory, climate resilience, and data consolidations and reporting. We need more than this, actually, to accelerate innovations towards climate resilience. Other collaboration implemented is with the ITB University and the National Institute of Environmental Studies in Japan in the research and development of eco-city. Then the city of Bogor also committed to the Bright Light program from Clean Air Asia in realizing clean air in the Bogor city, and as the member of ASPEC UCLG. We have to admit that we are not the best cities, but it is important to underline that we continue to open ourselves in sharing experiences with other cities, both in Indonesia and from abroad. And we thank ICLE for making the city of Bogor a place of study for cities in Indonesia and cities in other countries. We are proud of having this role. And we also need to learn from other cities in supporting together for the development of low carbon cities. That will be the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak Bima, for your good explanation actually about the uniqueness of Bogor itself and how you deal with the water issues and also the transportation issue, while there are 2-3 bad signal at the time, but we can hear the idea of Bogor itself. Pak Hadi will need to meet the minister. So before that, maybe Pak Hadi, would you stay around 5 or you need to leave now? Okay. But once again, thank you, Pak Hadi, for your joining us to share our urban developments policies and also infrastructure policy.
Yeah.
And then hopefully we can also discuss it later again. Thank you, Pak Hadi.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So Mia, I will give our discussion. We have Mia now and Buteti. Mia, as you may heard, from Pak Hadi and also Pak Bima, from the Indonesian experience to deal with the issues, environmental issues, and also climate change. And how do you see it's also, let's say, compared to the Philippines or compared to our region, Southeast Asia, for bringing these, let's say, challenges and also the idea and the thought for both policies to bring to the better future for 2030. Maybe you also noticed that in 2030 we should also report our SDGs in every country, but at least SDG 11 is related to our discussion now. So would you mind to also share a bit about your opinion on the 2030 cities as response to our Indonesian's government from Pak Hadi and also Pak Bima?
All right.
The floor is yours, Mia.
Okay. Shall we start with the video? Okay.
I would like to share a short video about a tractable point of view to answer the question from Andy. Give me a second. This is screen one.
Hopefully Zoom can facilitate the video. Yeah, sometimes it's, you know, the video is quite what you call it, not discreetly, not in continuously, but that's right.
Okay, I try to optimize the video. Hope it can continue.
More than 50% of the people will be living in urbanized city centers. The way they develop will be driven by the preferences of citizens, the mobility preferences, the energy preferences, the waste preferences, the natural areas preferences. We cannot solve intrinsically the fact that that puts pressure on some areas, but we can deal with it. I believe it's important to actually put emphasis on public transport. We will have to reuse a lot of the materials we have been using to foresee in our livelihood. Most people will have understood, will have accepted already right now or in the near future that climate change is happening, and that, I hope, will also translate into impact in terms of individual behaviors and individual actions in a stronger way. At the same time, I see a huge opportunity for greening buildings, putting green roofs on top of buildings. Technology is a means to an end, and technology can help us a lot, is helping us, will help us even more, as long as it's used to solve problems rather than pushed as a solution on itself. It could be a good way to actually enhance that public transport by using apps. Nowadays, we can actually check the train hours via our app and actually schedule our day around it. Decrease the gap between politicians and citizens, increase the insight of ordinary people in politics. What I believe cities can do and should do, and where we support and want to support even more, is to figure out how to support citizens to make their choices individually and as a group in a way that it optimizes the societal good. What we need, for example, in mobility is the right mobility for the right situation.
Okay. So thank you, Edwin. So now the floor is yours, Mia. How then zero carbon is still profitable? That's maybe the main issues now, yeah?
Yes.
Please.
All right. Edwin, can you show us our slides? So, apa kabar, everyone? Saya architect, urban planner Mia Quimpo, and dari Filipina. Okay, so seperti apa kota pada 2030? Indeed, how will cities look like in 2030 or in 10 years? Okay. Tractable conducted a research for almost a year and published the results and findings of our idea or the outcome of the research of what cities will look like in 2030. We explored the key concepts of cities that frame this view. We also surveyed the global trends that drive cities and the criteria and structure to define various city typologies, and concluded with 9 or sambilan typology kota or city typologies. Next, please. Okay. I will be presenting 2 parts. First, I will be presenting global urban trends, which are similar to what we have seen in the different presentations earlier. And I will just summarize and reinforce this. And in part 2, I will be showing you, I will be presenting the 9 city typologies. However, due to time constraints, I will just be showing you samples of these typologies. We surveyed and analyzed a collection of internal and external documents. These include Tractable's worldwide urban design strategy and 360 scan tool, which Etienne had discussed earlier. We also did research done by our competitors. We also looked at external research papers and publications by key experts, as well as strategic studies and research by our mother company, NG, especially the B2T and Crygen, among others. Okay. We identified 7 categories of global trends that summarize most of the major issues affecting us today. Some have already been mentioned by most of our speakers, right? First and foremost, of course, is demography. We know about urbanization trends, and we know that the future of the world's population is urban. Okay, and we have been hearing all these years, no, in all the presentations that the global population is increasing, and more than half of the world's population will be living in cities by 2050. All right, and in fact, according to Euromonitor, Metro Jakarta will be the world's most populous city by 2030. Right, it will succeed Tokyo as it reaches 35.6 million inhabitants. Manila, where I live, will be at 4th place, no? Since it's also a metropolitan region. Second, another trend, of course, is environmental trends. Worldwide, we see that cities are consumers of resources and accountable for a considerable part of global pollution and climate change. We have proven this with the COVID, and as we had gone into lockdown, particularly us in Metro Manila, we have seen how the environment had slowly regenerated itself in terms of pollution, in terms of greenery. We also look at social trends. There have been many shifts in the social structure and the transformation of cities and regions. We see increasing poverty, increasing inequalities, polarization, multiculturalism, and the increasing demand of participation. All right. We also see how technology is also emerging as one of the global trends. With our lockdown, we have seen how the importance of digitalization, how we have used the internet, the power of the internet and our mobile technology to be able to compensate for our inability to go out of our homes. Okay. We also see how geopolitical trends have play a part in global issues. No? So we see how there's a diverse range of geopolitical actors, and they are interacting and conflicting. See, so we see political instability, global power shifting to the east, war and conflict, decentralization, and even bottom-up participation, as was mentioned by one of our ministers. We also see economic trends, how cities are the main creators of economic wealth, and our cities generate over 70% of the world's GDP. However, with the age of globalization, the relationship between economic growth and urban prosperity is still up for debate, right? In Jakarta, we see how the strong middle class is driving consumption in the city. And lastly, we have spatial trends, diverse trends that relate to the creation, accumulation, or redistribution of social, cultural, and spatial capital and assets. They are actively shaping cities worldwide. We see informal urbanization, increasing spatial inequalities. However, we are also seeing increasing mobility, slow and zero carbon mobility, and the return of nature in cities. Okay, I just want to share how each global trend is presented in the research paper. You will see that they're presented in a continuum showing whether it is global or local, whereas solutions are also presented in the continuum in terms of local and global opportunities. Next slide, please. There, so there's the continuum showing the global and local opportunities as well as trends. All right. Next slide, please. We see how these global trends act as drivers of change that steer the development of cities. Okay. These global trends could be interpreted as a constellation of multiple forces, and they can either be challenges or opportunities. Okay. Next slide. Right. Okay, next. Okay. Their influence on cities depends on the city characteristics or the internal forces and the city, community, or the stakeholders' vision. Okay. Next. However, these internal forces could be resistant to change. Okay. Or instead, we may embrace and be facilitators of change, right? So most of the time, these internal forces act as both obstacles and facilitators of change at the same time. So with this perspective, the city could be viewed as a resistant machine, characterized by a dominant slow velocity, likened to city infrastructure and policy, and a fast-changing component representing the socio-cultural technological dimension. So let's look at the various city typologies. Okay, next please. Based on these studies, these surveys, we have identified 9 typologies: the global city, the knowledge city, the historical city, the industrial city, the resort city, the cultural city, the administrative city, the mega city, of which Jakarta is one of them, and the local city. So how did we classify these city typologies? We looked at their commonalities and their differences. And we also looked at 5 key concepts that describe the wide range of urban conditions worldwide. Now, what are these 5 key concepts? Firstly, is that we are now living in the century of cities, right? As I mentioned earlier, and other speakers did, over 50% of the world's population lives in urban areas. And given this massive shift towards urban living, sustainable development depends on increasingly successful urban management of growth, right? Secondly, a second key concept of cities is the ambiguity of the city definition, right? So everyone knows what a city is, or a kota, but we are not able to give the same definition, right? So since the last century, the change has been that there are no longer borders between urban and rural territory. These have all started to blur, making the previous definition insufficient. Today, it is almost impossible to define the border between what we could define as city and the rest, right? Thirdly, the third concept refers to one of the main global trends related to urbanization, the rise of the mega regions. In the past, we are used to thinking about economies in terms of countries or nation states. However, over the past 2 or 3 decades, we have seen the rise of a new urban and economic unit, the mega region. To date, we have around 40 mega regions worldwide, including Metro Jakarta and Metro Manila. And to compare with countries or nation states, these metro regions actually are the same as the 40th largest country in terms of GDP, with an economy of around 100 billion US dollars. So these regions host talent, productive capability, innovation, and markets on a large scale, and thanks to advanced globalization, are exposed to worldwide competition. Okay. All right. Another concept is that we all know that the global economy is made of islands, cities, and mega regions, where high-tech and value-added production are concentrated, and where the most relevant innovations are realized. So these areas actually of agglomeration of production are drivers of these economies, but at the same time, they generate territorial divergences or issues and challenges. So this condition is called a development dilemma. It's either to have uniform growth in a territory, compensating the disruption, or concentrated efforts on the good functioning of the economy driving cities. And lastly, the fifth concept is the city within a city. Okay. Cities have multiple identities and characteristics, and they are hosted simultaneously in one city. So like Jakarta is not only just the capital city, it is also the center of education for Indonesia, as well as the financial center, right? And the center of business. So this concept is also key to understanding the limits of the proposed methodology that we are presenting. It is because each city typology is not exclusive. For this reason, each city can actually fit one or more typologies. Okay.
Oh.
All right. Okay. So this study has also developed a description of set city typologies that summarize a wide spectrum of cities worldwide. We also have defined a range of criteria in order to express and clarify the differences between each city's typology and their common features. So these are the 4 main criteria. One is privileged function. It means that each typology is mainly defined by one key function. So In most cases, the primary function does not exclude others, but it actually it is the raison d'etre of the city itself, right? So this criteria is key for the knowledge city, the industrial city, the resort city, cultural city, and administrative city, where there is really one main function. Secondly, we also have another criteria is that do those cities have complex urban ecosystems? Because cities are characterized by a high level of complexity, right? And we see this in as they host diverse activities within all economic sectors and a huge diversity in terms of population and social dynamics. This criteria is key for the global city, the administrative city, and the mega city, right? The third criteria is the dynamic of dependency, wherein we see that cities are mainly characterized by the relationship of dependency to other cities. This applies normally to smaller, medium-sized cities or towns. And it is key for the global city, administrative city, and mega city. Last criteria would be the way of developing. It's very important to know if these cities have a clearly defined process or method, or by its level of complexity in its history, in its past, present, or future. So this applies to the historical cities with a complex palimpsest of elements that define their identity, or to megacities that grow spontaneously through uncontrolled urbanization. This is also key to the industrial city. So we see that cities are really complex. They host multiple functions and diverse levels of complexity. But it is really the most dominant function which defines their identity. So in this, I will be showing you now an example of one typology and how we actually present the different elements of that typology. So I'll be sharing with you the industrial city. All right. So each typology actually has a file of a different set of quantitative and qualitative elements, right? So firstly, we usually have 9 examples of real cities, and it helps us understand which cities fit the mentioned typologies. For instance, for the industrial city, we have Genk, we have Charleroi in Belgium, Manchester in the United Kingdom, Detroit, St. Louis, Pittsburgh in the USA, Marseille in France, Belfast in Ireland, and Essen in Germany, right? We looked at each and every country and city and studied them. We also looked at their economic category based on the United Nations classification as a reference. And we looked at it whether is it a developing economy or an economy in transition or a developed economy. So for industrial cities, these are all present in all countries worldwide. We also looked at the Fragile State Index. It is an index developed by the think tank Fund for Peace and the American magazine Foreign Policy. It looks at 12 indicators of vulnerability grouped by category, such as cohesion, economic, political, and social. So for this, for the cities 2030, we looked at 4, alert, warning, stable, or is it sustainable? So for industrial cities, the 9 cities we looked at, they were all sustainable. We also looked at city population size, and we categorized them in terms of a small, extra small city, small city, medium and large, and extra large city with more than 10 million inhabitants. We have seen also that industrial cities vary in population size from 500,000 citizens up to 5 million people. And most industrial cities stay in the middle of this extreme. And lastly, we look at the urban form or morphology. Is the industrial city compact, sprawling, diffuse, polycentric, or a megacity? We have found that industrial cities are often to the subject of sprawl and have a polycentric character due to the proximity to infrastructure and raw materials. All right. For each city typology, we also looked at, we also crafted SWOT and ratio diagram, right? So here's an example of the SWOT analysis and ratio for the industrial city. We considered the average position calculated from the 9 examples of real cities. then created a SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, clustered by the 7 dimensions there. We also looked at opportunities and threats as well in radar format. Sorry. Okay. Next.
Okay.
We also provided a thematic and sectoral description for each city's typology. It will give a qualitative understanding of which our themes are more sensible for each city. All right. Lastly, we provided a solutions and opportunities view, a project and solution-oriented description with a synthetic visualization of the city typology with its distinctive key characteristics. If you look at the image, we have also aligned this with the city perspectives of the 360 scan discussed earlier by Etienne. There. So I close with our motto, the motto of Tractable, which is really to design better cities and territories and engineering a zero carbon future. To view the complete results and findings of the research, please download from our website, our Tractable website, the full study. Terima kasih and salamat sore.
Yeah, thank you, Mia. I think it's a nice measurement, yeah, and with the bar and also the spider web, yeah, on how we actually measure our footprint or our urban track itself. So the last but not least, Bu Teti, as you may also heard from the beginning that there are several, let's say, idea and also experiences of how the city can be examined, can be mapped, and also there are a lot of attention on how the integrated infrastructures being developed, and also the climate change issues should be also not only mainstream at this today discussion, but also being a part of the future economy of green and also low carbon or zero carbon development. So how do you see in the context of Indonesian cities, and what is the challenge or the gap that you perhaps see on this after this discussion or after this presentation? Bu Teti, can you share your thought a little bit?
Yeah, thank you, Pak Andi. Thank you, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. Can you probably see me? I'm presenting as a responder or discussion instead of a presenter, and looking at or listening to what is being presented previously in the by the other presenters, and we are slowly being able to recognize the difference and maybe attempting to understand how our city works and how our city trying to change, responding to the opportunities and challenges that happens. We recognize that there are several values that are that we are attempting to solve as a result of how our cities function at this moment. And looking at, I would like to do sort of summarize or overview a bit about what is being presented by resource person from the Tractable, that giving us insight into the fact that our cities can have many functions, that our cities can have its new systemic or new system of performance, where, for example, our sustainability will depend on various base factors, and also there is a driver of change that create new differences, create a dynamics in the cities. And also we start to see how in the presentation by Pak Hadi as well as Pak Bima as the mayor of Bogor, showing that how not easy it is for our cities, for our region, to be more responsive to what is being told to them about the situation of the cities. And in the context of Hadi, we saw that strategic development region is one of the way for us to catch up with the infrastructure gap that is going on in various parts of our cities. Now, remember that many urban areas in Indonesia are not consolidated administration, which means they don't have specific government of cities or municipalities, but they are considered to be urban region. And we also know that some of the districts or regencies or kabupaten becoming big and become more of an urban region, in which case that we probably will find our urban region as wide as, in terms of size, as wide as a kabupaten. Than just a small scale like a city of Bogor or a city of Bandung. So we in some ways will see that our urban regions are not consolidated in a way that we would have an institution to govern. And it will happen probably for some times, particularly if you start to see that how many government that are formed based on district and how many government that are formed to become municipalities. There are so few municipalities being formed for the last 20 years. And in that case, that our cities probably become widespread and develop more organically than being managed as a form of public governance. And that would also lead to the fact that when we start to talk about our public interest or interest as a city, where we like to deal with the word with the understanding about sharing, as being presented by Mr. Etienne about public transportation, as well as Pak Bima in public transportation, as well as what is being presented about infrastructure. Those are some of the feature in cities that we share with other people, that it's not going to be decided upon on how it was utilized based only on the individual decision making. In that sense, then our cities and especially citizen will rely on shared decision making and shared interest. And that I think we would like to see our cities doesn't just belong to individuals, but will belong to many individuals sharing the same interest. I think for short, I will end this response to the 4 presentation that just happens before. Thank you, Pak Andi.
Thank you very much, yeah, Jati, for your sharp response, yeah, and also comments on what the resource person has presented so far. So Indonesia, I think, now facing more than 10 metropolitan regions, and in the future, in the next 10 years, we are also dealing with how this metropolitan area can be also more and more sustainable and has a more productive, in the sense that also covers the small medium enterprises, not only the big investment, and also not only the industrial sectors, but also the digital economy will come, and also the other creative industry will come. So we need to really to anticipate the kind of future urbanization that will take place also in Indonesia. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we also need, we have so many, I think, inputs and also knowledge today. We need also to digest for ourselves and for our interest as well. But since now we are entering the closing, but I only can give you 1 or 2 questions to our resource person. Unfortunately, Pak Bima asked also permissions, need to meet some guests at this moment. So maybe the questions that I can read from the chat column is for Etienne. Etienne, maybe you can also respond on the question of Pak Windu and how you think that the new capital city would be developed as forest city. And then is it possible to have a PPP scheme in the term of the forest city? Maybe that's the question for you that you can respond.
Yes, thank you, Pakendi. I saw the question. It's it's quite interesting question. Forest city. I think we would probably need half an hour to define exactly what it means. But I think I would I would agree with that vision. It communicates a vision of Indonesia that is sustainable and smart. It's quite visionary, I think. The closest concept that I can think of is, of course, Singapore, that has been developed as a garden city with really what we could call a balance between greeneries, park, and human activity, and we can see we can see the result. And I would suggest that it's a very good idea. Yes. Now, in detail, I would be interested to see exactly what the person has in mind.
So maybe the ecological approach, the conservation economy, and also the carbon economy. Do you think is it also an opportunity to attract the investment, for example, to the new town development, as you may see in the next 10 years? Is there any potential, because we have forests, right, in the new town, in the new capital? So do you think it also will attract the investor?
Pakendi, on this one, I think it's not only opportunity, it's a must. I think a city that is being developed without taking into consideration this carbon economy, this low energy technology is not credible today, especially facing the challenge we have seen recently. I think it's not possible not to have this aspect into the design aspect. So for me, it's not only an opportunity; it's something that we have to do. We must do. Indeed. I don't know if my colleague has a view on this, on the capital city in Indonesia, or the fact that we can indeed take into account these very important challenges we have been living recently into the design of our infrastructure.
Okay, got it. Okay, and then maybe the next topic that I would also like to ask you or Mia is about the city scan itself. Yeah, if you see Bogor, for example, and Jakarta is quite different size. Yeah. So do you think that your cities can also apply to the different kind of the size of the cities? And also, is it also possible about the data actually? How the data that you collect, yeah, for that kind of the scanning system? Is it the perceptions, or is it the real data or statistical data that you gather from the city?
Yeah, I think on this one, it's important to note that a large part of the expertise of our team is to customize the methodology for each development. So not every city is different. To be honest, it's not possible not to customize. So it can apply to different size. Yes, it can also apply to environments that are not properly cities per se, but it can be an industrial development, urban development, or for instance, an airport. So it can be done on a part of a city. There's no issue with this. So the methodology remains the same, and then we adapt, we customize, and this is something we have been we are used to do. After, in terms of data, of course, it will be a mix between what is available, what we can survey, We can start with very little information on desktop study, on available public information, and then deep dive. It really depends on context and project. We have seen some cities, some developers that really wanted to engage stakeholders. And so we had created workshops specifically with different stakeholders to collect everyone's input. And so data was very numerous, a lot of data. In some other case, we can do very quick assessment. So it really depends. I don't know if, maybe Matthias, if you have a view on this you want to share, I think it's good that you are here with us as well.
Matthias, please.
Yeah, so maybe as Etienne said, it is something that can be, that certainly needs to be customized, and it can also be interesting to do it on just a part of the city or on other type of developments, like mentioned, an airport or a stadium, even with it, or an industrial zone. So that's the interesting thing of the concept, that it can be really customized, and it's only a starting point for us, and that's also important to mention. It's really to map the current situation, and then you can also project maybe some scenarios for development. If you would say, okay, now we are here, if we would have this roadmap, this could bring us in 5 years, in 10 years, this could bring us to such a view based on the city scan, if we could manage to do these development steps. So it can also be looking a bit into the future based on a program of development that has been agreed upon or something like that.
Okay, thank you. And then maybe one question from the YouTube that you can also respond. Yeah, we have so many city concepts that you, from your experience and also from your idea how to develop a city, for example, low carbon or zero carbon city. And then the question from the YouTube channel asks, how usually you convince the stakeholder to follow that track or the idea, because maybe it's kind of difference a maturity of the, let's say, awareness of the needs or the ultimate needs of the zero carbon itself. So how do you convince the stakeholder and so on, please?
Well, that's also an interesting part of the city scan as such. Stakeholder management and engagement can be part of this first mapping, and then based on the needs and on the involvement and the discussions that are created, you can take the next steps into really developing together this low carbon concepts. But what I think that is important to mention is first the position of Tractebel in this is very interesting, because we really have this, let's say, this energy background. We are part of the NG group, and we're historically we're also have always been active in this energy sector. So this, I think this is also what sets us apart from the competitors in urban planning, in transport infrastructure, that we have this really integrated vision with energy. And so this low carbon debate of the last years is something that we actually have already been doing and incorporating for overall the last decades. First with the energy transition, now the decarbonization roadmaps. This is all part of our DNA. That's one point. And then secondly, the ability to really integrate all this into all these different aspects, because you have low carbon and you have green, but also the other elements of sustainability, integrate them together into a roadmap. If you can start this discussion and if you can put this sustainability in a broad sense topics on the agenda from the beginning, the result in the end will be so much better. The efficiency will be a lot better. The results you will get on sustainability, on energy, on even on circular economy, will be all, all the results will be so much better if you can really integrate this. And this is also one of our strengths in this domain for sure.
Okay. Continue, please.
No, that was the point that I wanted to make. So this integration is very is one of our core strengths.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, we also faces the integration actually in Indonesia, as you may heard from Pak Hadi also. Pak Hadi dealing with the basic infrastructure for housing and settlement at the different ministries. We are, for example, energy. We have the other ministries, and for the transportation we have other ministries, and also the vertical coordination between national and our city level. Yeah, but at least we know this how to integrate.
Sorry, I lost
goals.
you.
We have the same that we want to achieve the zero carbon, for example. That's, I think, will give us some space for negotiation, for discussions among stakeholders and also among governments institutions, because Indonesia is very big countries. We handling for more than 400 urban regions, not only cities but also small and secondary cities. Thank you so much for your insight. And I think at this moment we have run out of time. Maybe I give one opportunity to Etienne to have your closing remarks on how do you once again to highlight what do we need to consider about the 2030 is the key points that not only the governments but also us as a planners, as an architect, and also the developer itself. Yeah, because in this room I think there are not only governments officers but also the scholars and also the planners. Maybe Etienne first and Matthias and also Mia, and back to Buteti. Please, just closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Pak Andy, for the opportunity to have a closing remark. Your demand is very vast, so I don't know if I will be able to successfully answer, but I will say this from the best practice, from experience we've had. I think I want to insist on the importance of having a plan. I think it seems simple, but it's very important. And this is why we have this whole methodology of 360 master planning and action plan. If you have target and roadmap, and I know Indonesia is looking to attract investors in PPP project, and some of the money will come from private. It's a lot easier when you have a plan that you can show a roadmap, and that's really the starting point for me.
Thank you. Thank you. Matthias, would you like to add?
Just maybe on that, to indeed attract this kind of investment. This is also where the NG group could play a role if there is a plan, and there could be they could be taking a part of the energy infrastructure and then integrating renewable energies, and this is their core, let's say their core expertise. Then they could be a valuable partner in such a PPP setup to bring in funding and to build something that is sustainable, low carbon, and then with a long-term return. This is, I think, an important role they could play.
Yeah, and lastly, for me, we're all planners here, and we all are, some of us, we work with cities, municipalities. I think the important thing is for cities in 2030 is that we try to determine what is the DNA of our city and what is the typology of our city. And I think we should not think that we are just an emerging city or country, but that this technology and this zero carbon is only for the first world. No, it's for all of us, because we're looking at a global sustainability a vision. And at the same time, I think it's achievable in small increments. And that's the reason why the 360 is so beautiful, because you're able to prioritize what you can do now and what you can set aside that you can do later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia. I just lost my signal at the beginning, but thank you once again. So, Bu Teti, what is our taking home? I mean, what is our points to our Indonesian planners and architects? From this discussion, I think, at least for myself, the future of energy will also shape the future of the cities. The renewable energy, of course, is a must and a mandatory, but how the transitions should be taken, and like Etienne said, we should need a roadmap, we should need plan to achieve that. What's your thought on that, Bu Teti, please?
Yeah. Reaching toward the 2030, what we should do as a city, or what we should be engaging is to involve in many acceleration, especially with the help of science, technology, as well as the fast type of technology which was mentioned before, and the slow type of technology, which is infrastructure development, that we also have to deal with. And with those, we need to combine the goodness of the fast track technology and the slow track technology in order to make it work for our cities, and so that we can measure later on how efficient, how effective, as well as how inclusive and how beneficial those cities to all groups in the city. I think that we realize that we, especially in this time where a pandemic actually decrease our effort to make our cities become more livable. What happens is that we need to look back at how far this can hinder our effort to reach what is being attained through SDGs, as well as NUA, as well as other agenda internationally and locally. I think that's what I'd like to see our effort. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bu Teti. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining these discussions. I think we have so many, not only, I think, experiences that we can learn from Tractable NG, but also the idea of how we shape our cities in the future. Thank you so much, Charles, Etienne, Matthias, Mia, for your involvement in this discussion and your thoughtful comments. And Pak Hadi and the staffs from the Ministry of Public Works, Rida, and also Mayor Bima and the staffs from Government City of Bogor. Bu Teti, as always, thank you very much for your support and your comments. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to know further, you can contact Edwin. I think Edwin can share also the contact person and email and or address to the chat room. But you can also have our report on these discussions in the next 2 weeks, and then you can also access it through digital or also through hard copy as your demand. So I think today's discussion is very useful, and I will give back to Dimas and Edwin to close this discussion. Thank you once again, and hopefully we can meet in the other programs of Cities Lab. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pak Andi.
Thank you, Pak Edwin. Do you want to add a closing statement or not?
Yes, Pak Dimas. First of all, we would like to thank all the participants. It's our honor to share our knowledge and expertise to Indonesia people, communities, and government. We are open to further discussion and further collaboration to build Indonesia. One more time, thanks to Pak Andi, Pak Dimas, who facilitated us in collaboration with Citiestalk. Good afternoon. Terima kasih semuanya from Tractable.
Terima kasih Pak Edwin. Okay, thank you to all speakers. Thank you to all participants for attending the webinar until the very last of the discussion. You can also download the materials through link in the group chat, and you can also apply for e-certificate by filling in the form through the link in the chat group. Thank you again from us, from Citiestalk, from Tractable NG, and also from Apexi. We look forward to meeting you again in the next series of discussion. Thank you and good afternoon.
Okay, bye. Thank you.